Today, we're going to talk about a guy whose wealth was so insane, so vast, that he literally broke the economy of an entire country just by passing through. We're talking about Mansa Musa, the Golden King of Mali.
All right, let me ask you something right off the bat. Who do you think was the richest person in all of history?
Now, if your mind immediately jumped to some tech billionaire or maybe one of those Gilded Age industrialists, well, you're not even in the right ballpark. Nope. The guy we're talking about was in charge almost 700 years ago, and honestly, his story sounds more like a myth than actual history.
So, you gotta wonder, how does an African king become this global legend? Well, it all boils down to one absolutely incredible journey.
So, back in 1324, Mansa Musa decides to go on a pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. But listen, this was not your average trip. He was about to put his West African empire on the map, revealing a level of wealth that most people in Europe and the Middle East didn't even know was possible.
First off, let's just try to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this thing. His caravan, it wasn't just a group of people. It was a moving city. We're talking 60,000 people. Soldiers, officials, entertainers, servants, the whole shebang, all marching across the desert.
And how do you even begin to move a king's entire fortune across a continent? Well, you use a long train of camels, of course, but it's what they were carrying. That's the part that's just mind-blowing. Get this, historical accounts say that part of his caravan was loaded with nothing but pure gold, 24,000 pounds of it. I mean, this wasn't just a religious trip, it was a massive statement to the entire world. So that kind of begs the question, right? Where on earth did all that gold come from? Well, the answer is pretty simple, actually. It lies right in the ground beneath his empire. See, the Kingdom of Mali wasn't just rich, it was literally sitting on top of one of the most valuable resources on the planet. So here's the deal. Mali had what seemed like endless supplies of gold. But in that crazy heat, they needed something else just as badly to survive. Salt, to keep their food from going bad. And boom, that created the perfect trade-off. You had merchants dragging these huge slabs of salt across the brutal Sahara Desert, and the Malians were ready to trade it for gold, pound for pound. It was this simple exchange that built an entire empire and made Mali the economic superpower of the region. Okay, but an empire is more than just gold, right? It's about the person leading it. So who exactly was this man in charge of all that wealth? Well, Mansa Musa came from a seriously powerful family line. His ancestor was the legendary Sundiata Keita, sometimes called the Lion King, who was the one who first united the whole region and founded the kingdom. So yeah, Musa inherited a pretty solid and wealthy setup.
Here's something really cool about Mali. History wasn't really written down. It was spoken, it was performed, and that was the job of a griot. Now, a griot wasn't just a storyteller. They were the official historian, the living library of the kingdom, and often the king's most important and trusted advisor. And get this, here's a little detail about how he ruled. To create this vibe of immense power and almost godlike authority, Mansa Musa hardly ever spoke directly to his people. Instead, he'd whisper his commands to his griot, and the griot would be the one to speak to the crowds. All right, so now that we have a better picture of the man and his empire, let's get back to that unbelievable journey. You see, Musa was a devout Muslim, and this whole trip was a Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. That's a sacred duty for any Muslim who can make the journey. So for him, it was a deeply religious act. But, let's be real, it was also a brilliant PR move for his empire. The whole thing was just epic. It took over a year. He sets off in 1324, takes his golden city across the Sahara, makes that famous stop in Egypt, and finally gets to Mecca. But the return trip was just as crucial. He didn't come back with just trinkets. He came back with brains, scholars, architects, the smartest people he could find, to level up his own kingdom. And if you want to understand the scale of his wealth, just look at what happened when he stopped in Egypt. He gave away so much gold as gifts to the poor for trade that he completely crashed the market. The value of gold just tanked, and it took Egypt's economy more than 10 years to get back on its feet. The man literally broke their economy just by being generous. But the pilgrimage wasn't just the final act. Oh no. When Mansa Musa got back home, he used all the fame and the connections he'd made to kickstart a true golden age for Mali. He got right to work, launching this huge building program. He poured his wealth into transforming his kingdom, funding new mosques, schools, and libraries all over the empire.
He turned his cities into world-class centers of culture.
And the crown jewel of it all was Timbuktu. With his funding, the University of Sankore became one of the greatest centers of learning on the planet. I mean, it attracted the best thinkers, scholars, astronomers, mathematicians from all over Africa and the Middle East.
So what happened? What became of this incredible empire? And what's the big takeaway from the story of Mansa Musa?
Well, as we know, empires don't last forever. After Mansa Musa died, his sons and successors just couldn't keep things together. The kingdom faced invasions, and eventually, the neighboring Songhai Empire rose up and took over as the new big power in the region.
But the legacy of Mansa Musa, that lives on. His story, which was pretty much forgotten outside of West Africa for centuries, is this huge reminder that the history we usually learn is, well, it's incomplete. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other incredible stories, other great leaders, and other golden empires have just been left out of our history books? What else is out there that we just don't know about yet?